I've been with Nelson, 36M, for over a decade now. We met during our sophomore year of college when we were both part of the same study group for an economics class. I remember being drawn to his quick wit and infectious laugh. We started dating a few months later and have been together ever since. Our relationship moved quickly after graduation. We both landed jobs in the same city and decided to move in together. Nelson proposed on our 3-year anniversary during a weekend getaway to the beach. It was simple and perfect, just like us. We got married a year later in a small ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. For the most part, our marriage has been great. We've always been each other's best friends and biggest supporters. We love traveling together, trying new restaurants, and having game nights with our friends. We even adopted a golden retriever named Charlie who's become our furry child. But like any couple, we've had our share of challenges. The biggest one has been Nelson's job. He works as a sales manager for a large tech company, a position he's held for about 6 years now. While I'm incredibly proud of his success, his job requires a lot of travel. He's usually gone for 2 to 3 weeks each month, which can be tough on our relationship. At first, we tried to make the most of it. We'd have long FaceTime calls every night and I'd send him care packages for his longer trips. But over time, the distance started to take its toll. We'd argue more when he was home, usually about little things that didn't really matter. I started feeling lonely and disconnected, even when he was around. About 3 years ago, Nelson started mentioning a new coworker named Megan, 32F. She had just joined his team and they hit it off right away. At first, I didn't think much of it. Nelson has always been a friendly guy and I was glad he had someone to hang out with during his work trips. He'd come home and tell me stories about their shared love for obscure 80s movies or how they'd found the best hole-in-the-wall restaurants in whatever city they were visiting. As time went on, though, I started to notice that Nelson was talking about Megan more and more. It seemed like every conversation somehow circled back to her. Megan found this great new coffee shop, or Megan recommended this book I think you'd love. I tried to push my concerns aside. I trusted Nelson and I didn't want to be the jealous, paranoid wife. But there was always this nagging feeling in the back of my mind that something wasn't quite right. I remember one night about a year ago, Nelson and I were having a rare date night at home. We were curled up on the couch watching a movie when his phone kept buzzing with text messages. When I glanced over, I saw Megan's name on the screen. Nelson quickly turned his phone over, but not before I saw a message that said, "I miss you too." My stomach dropped, but when I asked Nelson about it, he brushed it off as just friendly banter between coworkers. Things came to a head about 6 months ago. Nelson came home from a particularly long trip and seemed distracted and distant. When I asked him what was wrong, he broke down and confessed that he and Megan had gotten drunk one night and ended up kissing. He swore it was a one-time thing and that it meant nothing, but I was devastated. I remember that night so clearly. We stayed up until dawn, talking and crying. Nelson swore up and down that he loved me and only me, that Megan was just a friend and the kiss was a drunken mistake. I wanted so badly to believe him, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. We went through a rough patch after that. I insisted that Nelson cut off all non-work contact with Megan and he agreed. He even offered to look for a new job, but I didn't want to derail his career over one mistake. We went to couples counseling and slowly started to rebuild our trust. I threw myself into making our relationship stronger. I started planning surprise weekend getaways for when Nelson was home. I took a cooking class so I could make his favorite meals. I even started learning about his industry so we could have more in-depth conversations about his work. Slowly but surely, things started to feel normal again. But just when I thought we were back on track, I got some shocking news. A mutual friend who works at Nelson's company called me last week. She seemed hesitant and uncomfortable, but finally blurted out that there are rumors going around the office that Megan is pregnant and that Nelson might be the father. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All the air left my lungs and for a moment, I couldn't speak. Our friend quickly backtracked, saying it was just office gossip and probably wasn't true. But the seed of doubt had been planted. I spent the next few days in a daze, replaying every interaction I'd ever seen between Nelson and Megan, analyzing every late night at the office or extended work trip. Had I been blind this whole time? Was their relationship more than just a close friendship and one drunken kiss? I confronted Nelson as soon as he got home from work. I still remember the look of shock on his face when I told him about the rumors. He seemed genuinely surprised and swore up and down that he hasn't had any sexual contact with Megan beyond that one drunken kiss. He offered to take a paternity test as soon as the baby is born to prove his innocence. I want to believe him, I really do. But I'm having a hard time trusting anything he says right now. The timing lines up perfectly with that work trip where he confessed to kissing Megan. What if more happened that night than he's admitting to? And even if nothing physical happened, has he been emotionally cheating on me this whole time? I'm torn about what to do next. Part of me wants to leave Nelson and start fresh. The trust between us feels irreparably broken. But we've built a life together and I still love him despite everything. We have a home together, shared friends, and even talked about starting a family of our own before all this happened. I'm also not 100% sure that the rumors are true. It's possible that Megan is pregnant by someone else and people are just jumping to conclusions because of how close she and Nelson have been. But even if that's the case, can I ever truly trust Nelson again? For now, I'd ask Nelson to move into our spare bedroom while I sort through my feelings. He's being very understanding and giving me space, which I appreciate. But I can't help feeling like my whole world has been turned upside down. I find myself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling and wondering how we got here. I think back to our college days, to our wedding, to all the happy memories we've shared. How did we go from that to this? I don't know what to do. Should I wait for the paternity test results before making any big decisions? Should I reach out to Megan directly to get her side of the story? Or should I just cut my losses now and file for divorce? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. I feel like I'm drowning and I don't know which way is up anymore. Update 1, it's been about a month since my last post and a lot has happened. First of all, thank you to everyone who offered advice and support. Your kind words and thoughtful suggestions have been a lifeline during this difficult time. After much deliberation, I decided to reach out to Megan directly. I know many of you advised against this, warning me that it could lead to more hurt and confusion. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to hear her side of the story. I needed to look her in the eye and try to understand what had really happened between her and my husband. Getting in touch with Megan wasn't easy. I didn't have her personal contact information, and I certainly wasn't going to ask Nelson for it. Eventually, I managed to find her on social media and sent her a message explaining who I was and asking if we could meet. To my surprise, she agreed almost immediately. We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, far from Nelson's office or any of our usual haunts. I arrived early, my stomach in knots as I waited for Megan to show up. When she walked in, I was struck by how ordinary she looked. I'm not sure what I was expecting, some femme fatale perhaps, but the woman who sat down across from me just looked tired and nervous. Megan seemed hesitant at first, but as we started talking, she became surprisingly open about everything. She confirmed that the rumors about her pregnancy were true. She's about 3 months along. However, she insists that Nelson is not the father. According to Megan, she had a brief fling with another co-worker, Tom, 29M, around the time she got pregnant. She and Tom had kept their relationship quiet because office romances are frowned upon at their company. As Megan spoke, I found myself studying her face, looking for any sign of deception. But her story seemed genuine. She explained that she was shocked when she heard the rumors about Nelson potentially being the father. She admitted that she and Nelson had grown close over the years and that there was some mutual attraction, but she swears nothing physical ever happened between them beyond that one drunken kiss. To back up her story, Megan even showed me text messages between her and Tom discussing the pregnancy. The timestamps and content seemed to corroborate her version of events. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, quickly followed by a new surge of confusion and hurt. If Megan was telling the truth, why hadn't Nelson been more forthcoming about their relationship? I asked Megan why she hadn't come forward to clear Nelson's name when the rumors started. Her answer surprised me. She said she was afraid of losing her job if her relationship with Tom came to light. She also didn't want to drag Tom into the mess since he's engaged to someone else. I could see the fear and regret in her eyes as she explained this, and despite everything, I found myself feeling a bit sorry for her. Our conversation lasted for over 2 hours. We talked about her relationship with Nelson, about the dynamics at their office, and about the pressure and loneliness that comes with frequent business travel. By the end of it, I felt like I had a much clearer picture of the situation, though not necessarily a happier one. After my conversation with Megan, I went home and sat down with Nelson. I told him everything Megan had said and watched his reaction carefully. He seemed genuinely relieved and thanked me for taking the initiative to talk to Megan. He reiterated that nothing had happened between them and said he had been racking his brain trying to figure out how these rumors had started. We had a long, honest conversation about our relationship and the issues that led to Nelson becoming so close with Megan in the first place. Nelson admitted that he had been feeling lonely and disconnected due to all his work travel, and that his friendship with Megan had filled a void. He realized now how inappropriate their relationship had become, even if it never crossed the line into a physical affair. As we talked, I found myself remembering all the little moments over the past few years where I'd felt neglected or pushed aside. The missed anniversaries because of important business trips. The distracted conversations where Nelson seemed more interested in his phone than in what I was saying. The gradual drift that had happened between us, so slow I barely noticed it until it became a chasm. Nelson has agreed to look for a new job that doesn't require so much travel. He's also recommitted to working on our marriage and rebuilding the trust between us. We've started seeing a couples counselor again and are taking things day by day. I know we're not out of the woods yet. There's still a lot of hurt and mistrust to work through. But I feel cautiously optimistic about our future for the first time in months. We're talking more openly than we have in years, really listening to each other's needs and fears. As for Megan, she's planning to come clean to HR about her relationship with Tom. She's worried about the professional consequences, but feels it's the right thing to do. I actually feel bad for her. This whole situation has been a mess for everyone involved. Looking back, I realize how close I came to throwing away my marriage based on rumors and suspicions. While Nelson's relationship with Megan was inappropriate and hurtful, it wasn't a full-blown affair I had feared. I'm grateful that I took the time to investigate and communicate before making any drastic decisions. That being said, we still have a long road ahead of us. Trust, once broken, is not easily rebuilt. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like Nelson and I are on the same team again, working together instead of against each other. I'll keep you all updated as things progress. Thank you again for all your support during this difficult time. Your advice and kind words have meant more than you know. Update 2. It's been another month since my last update, and I'm afraid things have taken a turn for the worse. I really thought Nelson and I were on the path to reconciliation, but some new information has come to light that has shaken everything up again. About 2 weeks ago, I got an anonymous email from someone claiming to be a co-worker of Nelson and Megan. The sender said they couldn't stand by and watch me be deceived any longer. The email contained some very detailed information about Nelson and Megan's relationship, including dates and locations of times they had allegedly been intimate. The sender said they felt guilty for staying silent and wanted me to know the truth. At first, I was hesitant to believe anything from an anonymous source. After all, it could have been someone with a grudge against Nelson or Megan, or even just a troublemaker who got off on creating drama. But the level of detail was unsettling, and some of the information lined up with things I already knew. I spent days agonizing over what to do with this information. Should I confront Nelson? Reach out to Megan again? Ignore it entirely? In the end, I decided to do some digging of my own before making any accusations. I reached out to some of Nelson's other co-workers under the guise of planning a surprise party for him. It wasn't entirely a lie. His birthday is coming up in a few months, and I had been thinking about doing something special. As I talked to his colleagues, I casually brought up Megan and watched their reactions. To my dismay, I was able to verify some of the information from the email. It seems that Nelson and Megan's relationship was common knowledge around the office. Several people confirmed seeing them behaving inappropriately at work events, everything from lingering touches to disappearing together for hours at a time during conferences. One co-worker, after a few drinks, even told me about walking in on Nelson and Megan in a compromising position in a supply closet at last year's holiday party. She apologized profusely for not telling me sooner, saying she didn't want to get involved in someone else's relationship drama. With each conversation, I felt my heart breaking all over again. How could I have been so blind? How could Nelson have looked me in the eye and lied to me over and over again? Armed with this new information, I confronted Nelson again. I didn't tell him about the anonymous email or my conversations with his co-workers. I simply told him that I knew he hadn't been entirely truthful about his relationship with Megan, and I gave him one last chance to come clean. This time, Nelson broke down and admitted that he had been lying. His affair with Megan had been going on for over a year, and it had definitely crossed the line into a physical relationship. He swore that it had ended when I first confronted him about the kiss, but the damage was already done. I was devastated all over again. Not only had Nelson been cheating on me, but he had looked me in the eye and lied about it multiple times. Even worse, he had let me reach out to Megan and believe her lies. I felt like a complete fool. As for Megan, it turns out her whole story about Tom was a fabrication. She is indeed pregnant, and there's a very real possibility that Nelson is the father. She's refusing to take a paternity test until after the baby is born, which won't be for several more months. I've asked Nelson to move out of our house. I just can't bear to look at him right now. He's begging for another chance, saying he'll do anything to make things right, but I don't know if I can ever trust him again. Every time I look at him, all I can see are the lies and the betrayal. I'm also dealing with a lot of anger towards Megan. She looked me in the eye and lied to my face, all while potentially carrying my husband's child. I'm trying not to do anything rash, but it's taking every ounce of self-control not to expose their affair to everyone we know. For now, I'm focusing on taking care of myself. I've moved in with my sister temporarily and am looking into individual therapy to help process everything. I've also reached out to a divorce lawyer to understand my options. I don't know if I'm ready to take that step yet, but I want to be prepared for all possibilities. I know many of you will probably say I told you so, and you'd be right. I should have trusted my gut from the beginning. I'm still processing everything and don't know what my next steps will be, but I wanted to update you all on the situation. Thank you for your continued support during this nightmare. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to give you all a final update on my situation. A lot has happened, and I'm in a very different place now than I was when I first posted. First, the big news: Megan gave birth to a baby boy last month. A paternity test confirmed that Nelson is indeed the father. Even though I had suspected it, having it confirmed was still a huge blow. It felt like the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. The last few months have been a roller coaster of emotions. After Nelson moved out, I went through periods of intense anger, deep sadness, and occasional moments of relief. There were days when I could barely get out of bed, and others where I felt a strange sense of freedom. I threw myself into work and picked up new hobbies to keep myself distracted. I started taking a pottery class and found it surprisingly therapeutic. There's something calming about working with clay, shaping it into something beautiful. It became a metaphor for my life, taking the mess I was given and trying to mold it into something meaningful. Nelson has been trying desperately to reconcile. He quit his job, started intensive therapy, and has been sending me long emails detailing every aspect of his affair and promising to spend the rest of his life making it up to me. Part of me appreciates his efforts, but another part feels it's too little, too late. I've had a lot of time to reflect on our relationship and how we got to this point. While I don't excuse Nelson's actions, I can see now how we both contributed to the breakdown of our marriage. The long periods apart, the lack of communication, the gradual emotional distance, it all created a perfect storm for infidelity. After much soul-searching and many conversations with my therapist, I made the difficult decision to file for divorce 3 months ago. It should be finalized soon. It's been a challenging process, but I'm fortunate that we don't have children together and our finances weren't too entangled. I'm walking away with a fair settlement and the knowledge that I'm doing the right thing for myself. As for Megan and Nelson, they're trying to co-parent their son. From what I've heard, it's not going smoothly. Megan lost her job when the full extent of their affair came to light, and she's bitter about it. There's a lot of tension between them, which I admit gives me a small sense of satisfaction. They destroyed my life for their affair, and now they're facing the consequences. On a more positive note, I've been focusing on healing and rebuilding my life. I've started a new job that I love, moved to a new city for a fresh start, and have been reconnecting with old friends and family who have been incredibly supportive. The change of scenery has been good for me. There are fewer reminders of Nelson and our life together here. I'm also dipping my toe back into the dating pool, although I'm taking things very slowly. It's strange to think of myself as single after being with Nelson for so long, but I'm trying to embrace this new chapter in my life. I've been on a few casual dates, nothing serious yet, but it's nice to be reminded that there are good men out there. There are still days when the pain and anger feel overwhelming. I doubt I'll ever fully get over the betrayal. But I'm proud of myself for how I've handled this situation and for having the strength to walk away instead of settling for a marriage built on lies. To anyone going through a similar situation, my advice would be to trust your instincts. If something feels off in your relationship, it probably is. Don't be afraid to ask tough questions and demand honesty from your partner. And remember that you deserve to be with someone who respects you and your relationship enough to be faithful. Looking back at my original post, I barely recognized the scared, confused woman I was then. This experience has changed me in ways I never expected. I'm stronger now, more self-assured. I know what I want and what I won't tolerate in a relationship.